This wasn't just another routine hearing, this was a full-blown confrontation. Congressman Joe Neguse went straight at Pam Bondi, exposing what he called a pattern of evasion, silence, and accountability collapse inside the Department of Justice. From shocking questions about a January 6th defendant, now working under her authority, to explosive accusations of gutting key enforcement teams, Neguse didn't hold back, and Bondi struggled to keep control of the narrative. What unfolded next was tense, chaotic, and deeply revealing about how power is being exercised behind closed doors.
Quote, "If you come for law enforcement, the Trump administration will come for you," end quote. I want to show you just a brief video. It's about 30 seconds, and I'll ask you a couple questions about it.
You guys are disgusting, man. Hey, you guys are disgusting. I'm former law enforcement. You're disgusting. You are the Nazi. You are the Gestapo. You can't see it because you're chasing your pension, right? Your pension, your retirement, right? That's what runs your life, your retirement.
The sad thing is they're not even going to get their pension because it's going to be worthless.
And shame on you. Shame on you. Shame on you.
Attorney General Bondi, that man works for you now, right?
Who was that, Congressman?
The man in that video, the one who was in the police-worn body cam footage, the one allegedly yelling, "Kill him," at police officers on January 6th, his name is Jared Wise.
He does work for us.
He works for you at the Department of
he
Justice.
does. He does.
This is an individual whom a federal grand jury indicted for 2 felonies and 4 misdemeanors related to his participation in the attack on January 6th. One of those charges was forcibly assaulting, resisting, opposing, impeding, intimidating, and interfering with police with the intent to commit another felony. This is who you choose as the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the United States of America to hire at the Department of Justice. Someone on video yelling, "Kill him," at police officers? Right?
I believe he was pardoned by President Trump.
Oh, he was pardoned. You're right. You're right. Pardoned by President Trump for his offense. Pardoned for yelling, "Kill him," at police officers. And yet you expect hardworking police officers across the country to believe that you take law enforcement seriously. You could imagine the reaction of so many folks across the country hearing the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the United States refuse to even condemn what that individual whom you've now hired did. But in any event, let's talk a little bit about some of the other divisions within the Department of Justice and what's happened over the last year. You're familiar with the Public Integrity section of the DOJ's Criminal Division. I think it's referred to as PIN. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know which presidential administration under which the PIN was first created?
I can tell you what administration that the weaponization was ended under.
I'll reclaim my time. This wasn't a trick question.
You don't get to
Madam Attorney
reclaim
General.
your time.
Madam Attorney General.
Because I don't like
Mr. Chairman, will you explain to the witness that he does reclaim his time?
Because I don't answer a question to your satisfaction?
Mr. Chairman.
Madam Attorney General, the time belongs to the gentleman from Colorado.
The president under which PIN was created was Gerald Ford. It was created after Watergate. I'm not asking a question, Madam Attorney General. The administration under which it was created was Gerald Ford. When you first started as the Attorney General of the United States, there were 35 people working in that office. There are now 2 people working in that office because you have gutted it. How many people work for the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team in the Criminal Division today?
Can I answer the question about PIN?
I've asked you a question. How many people work?
You've asked me a question, but you don't
How
want
many
the answer.
people work
I'm not
for the
gonna answer
National
your questions the way you
Cryptocurrency
want.
Enforcement Team? You won't answer how many
I'll
people?
answer PIN.
You.
PIN will not be
you know what?
weaponized.
You know what?
What's funny
Madam
about
Attorney General,
this?
I'll say to the chairman.
What's funny about this?
Chairman, you know what the answer is? And I think I understand
funny
why the
about
Attorney General
this?
does not want to answer the question. Because you eliminated the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team last year. So I understand why you don't want to tell the American people who works there.
Yeah, I understand why you don't want to talk about Mohammed Solomon in your district.
In any event,
who murdered people.
Mr. Chairman, will you stop the clock so his time is not wasted by the witness?
I've been very generous with allowing extra time when we have these little disputes.
I understand.
You got the time, Mr. Neguse?
I might as well ask the chairman these questions.
I'd be happy
because
to answer some of your questions.
What's profound, the questions I've asked,
The crime in your
I've
district.
asked, Mr. Chairman, are not trick questions. They're not gotcha questions. They're actually basic questions about how the Department of Justice functions and the unwillingness of this Attorney General to answer them in good faith. When a member of Congress asks how many people work at the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team and the Attorney General refuses to answer it, it is not a coincidence. It's because she eliminated the team. Why? Because her boss, the President of the United States, is making money hand over fist, $1.4 billion over the course of the last year through cryptocurrency holdings. I think what is happening at the Department of Justice is a disgrace, Mr. Chairman, and I would urge you to gain control of this hearing. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Yeah. I would ask the gentleman, does he agree with the standing up of the Deputy Attorney General for dealing with fraud? That's something that's happened in this administration, first time. You talked about Penn. That happened with this Justice Department.
We're talking about this committee.
Mr. Chairman, had you answered the question, had the Attorney General answered the question in that way, perhaps this hearing would have some modicum of resembling something that has typically been fairly conventional, an oversight hearing of the Department of Justice.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentlelady from Wyoming.
What makes this entire exchange so striking isn't just the volume or the tension, it's how almost scripted the evasiveness feels. Pam Bondi walks into the hearing projecting authority, composure, control, the full package. But the moment Joe Neguse begins asking straightforward, verifiable questions, that polished image starts to unravel in real time. Instead of clarity, we get detours. Instead of accountability, we get irritation. It's almost as if answering the question directly was never part of the plan. And the more Neguse narrows in, the more obvious it becomes that this isn't a misunderstanding, it's a strategy. Because let's be honest, these weren't trick questions. They weren't gotcha traps or partisan ambushes. They were basic oversight questions about staffing, enforcement priorities, and decisions that directly affect how the Department of Justice operates. And yet, Bondi responds like someone being unfairly interrogated, not someone entrusted with one of the most powerful legal roles in the country. There's a kind of quiet irony here that's hard to ignore. The Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the United States appearing visibly uncomfortable with being asked to account for law enforcement decisions. If this were anyone else in any other role, that alone would raise serious concerns. And then there's the pattern. Because this isn't just one awkward moment. It's a repeated cycle. Question comes in, hey, deflection. Attempt to pivot, why mild frustration, repeat. At one point, it almost feels like Neguse is doing the job Bondi is supposed to be doing, laying out facts clearly, connecting the dots, and explaining to the public what's actually happening behind the scenes. Meanwhile, Bondi seems stuck in a loop of avoiding specifics, as if precision itself is the problem. But in a hearing like this, precision is the job. Avoiding it isn't just noticeable, it's disqualifying in the eyes of anyone paying attention. What really undercuts the entire performance, though, is how transparent the avoidance becomes. When a direct question about staffing levels or the existence of a specific enforcement team is met with anything other than a direct answer, it doesn't create ambiguity, it creates suspicion. And Neguse leans into that, repeatedly pointing out that silence isn't neutral. It suggests there's something worth hiding, or at the very least, something too inconvenient to say out loud. Whether that's actually the case or not almost becomes irrelevant, because the perception alone does the damage. By the end of the exchange, what we're left with isn't a strong defense, a compelling explanation, or even a clear narrative from Bondi's side. Instead, it feels like a slow-motion collapse of credibility, not dramatic, not explosive, but steady and unmistakable. The kind where each unanswered question weighs a little more than the last. And perhaps the most ironic part of all is this. In a setting designed for accountability, the person responsible for enforcing it seemed the least willing to engage with it. If the goal was to project strength and control, the outcome landed much closer to something else entirely: hesitation, deflection, and a growing sense that the answers just weren't coming.